12, probably 2 days only, occupied players. And before we begin with the dramatics, I would like briefly to correct two misconceptions. The first is about May Day itself, because there is a misconception strenuously fostered by the United States government that May Day is a communist plot. I'm glad we didn't hear delirious cheers. And let me say just a word about how May Day began. May Day began on May 1st, 1886, when a group of people like ourselves in Chicago called for a nationwide general strike. But this nationwide general strike was not to welcome the kingdom of God or inaugurate socialism. It was for the 8-hour day. And there was a song called the 8-Hour Song, which was produced on that occasion that I think will give people the feeling. We want to feel the sunshine. We want to smell the flowers. We're sure that God has willed it, and we mean to have 8 hours. We're summoning our forces from shipyard, shop, and mill, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. That was the radical conspiracy behind May Day. The demand that people who were working 10 and 12 hours a day, who might go to work in the dark and come home in the dark, who didn't have time with their families, could have an 8-hour day, which was achieved, I think it's 14 plus 38, 52 years later in the Wages and Hours Act of 1938. 3 days later, there was a confrontation at the McCormick Agricultural Works on the southwest side of Chicago, still in operation when Alice and I moved there in 1967 under the name International Harvester. The workers at the McCormick Works, quite apart from the 8-hour movement, had gone on strike. Management brought in replacement workers, otherwise known as scabs, to fill the, thank you, to fill their jobs. And it just so happened that on the afternoon of May 3rd, as the replacement workers were leaving the plant, there was a confrontation with the men on strike. The authorities opened fire. Several people were killed. And that gave rise to a call for a meeting the following night, May 4th, 1886, at a location called the Haymarket in downtown Chicago. I'm presuming, since this was a time when people still used horses and buggies, that the Haymarket was where farmers brought in hay from the surrounding area and people got hay to feed their horses. In any case, it was, like Federal Plaza, a public forum. A meeting was called for the evening of May the 4th. It was attended by the mayor, Carter Harrison, and after it had gone on and on as people made speeches, he decided everything was peaceful and went home. After the mayor left, a junior police lieutenant, a man named Bonfield, brought a group of police officers on the scene, ordered the speakers to stop the meeting, to get off the hay wagon from which they were speaking, and a bomb went off. Nobody to this day knows who threw the bomb. 8 agitators, none of whom had any connection with the bomb, and most of whom were not even at the meeting, were indicted for murder. And the thing I think that we should never forget is that one of the group was a man named Albert Parsons. He had been born in the South. He fought with the Confederate Army. He married a woman who is apparently of mixed Native American and African American background. They moved to Chicago. Mr. Parsons became a printer. As it happens, of the group that was indicted, he was the only one born in the United States. The rest were German, English, August Spies, for example, who had moved to the United States. Mr. Parsons escaped Chicago. He went to Wisconsin, where he disguised himself, which I think mainly consisted in shaving his spectacular 19th century mustache. And there's every reason to believe that he could have kept his head down, perhaps moved further away, and avoided any personal consequences. What he did instead, probably the single bravest act by any American radical in our history, was to go back to Chicago, to walk into the courtroom, and to stand trial with his colleagues. And Mr. Parsons was one of the 4 men hanged the next year. May Day is therefore partly the celebration of May 1st, 1886, but also the celebration of the so-called Haymarket Martyrs, the men who were indicted, tried, and executed as a result of this second conflict at the McCormick Works. And far from May Day being some kind of communist conspiracy, rather it was picked up by working class movements all over the world, in Europe particularly. And to this very day, it is my understanding that on May 1st, that is today, there is an assemblage of Mexican workers at the Zocalo, the central plaza of Mexico City, and there is read aloud the last words of Albert Parsons and August Spies, translated into Spanish. Meantime, in the United States, the federal government has made war on May Day. It has renamed May Day Law Day. As we speak, there are occasions or preparation for occasions where lawyers will solemnly talk to one another in Boardman and elsewhere about the majesty of the law that killed these 4 men who had no responsibility for the bombing at the Haymarket. Labor Day has been moved to May Day has been moved to Labor Day. It is no longer a rank and file working class holiday, except in the sense that people have barbecues and drink beer and get ready to start school again. So that was the first misconception I wanted to address, namely the understanding of May Day, which is a rank and file working class holiday all over the world, not the creation of any political party nor of any government. Second misconception has to do with this play, because with the best of intentions, something was put out on the email about we were going to put on Clifford Odets' play, Waiting for Lefty, produced in 1935. No, we're not. We're going to put on a play inspired by Waiting for Lefty, called Waiting for Lefty in Youngstown. We couldn't put on the original Waiting for Lefty because what it's about, the whole audience is imagined to be taxi cab drivers. There are no taxi cab drivers in Youngstown, and therefore some change was required. We are instead, we are, work, except for me, because I'm the evil boss. Workers at a non-union steel plant somewhere in Youngstown that makes pipe to be used for fracking. And what you're going to see is a series of vignettes, and this is also what Mr. Odets did in the original, which will tell you how members of the rank and file committee from the pipe plant came to the point of wanting a union and thinking about a strike. So, no Occupy Youngstown listserv. We are not doing the original Clifford Odets play, but all praise to him, we are doing a play inspired by what he wrote 77 years ago. And if you'll all settle back, one of us will transform himself into the evil person known as Boss, and the play will begin.
Yeah.